Welcome into the Friday mailbag, where your YouTube comment questions are filling this helmet. I'm going to pick them out one by one and answer them in detail. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel and hit that like as well. Not only is it a huge help, but maybe you'll find yourself in the mailbag for next week. And let's get started with our first question here. We'll go with this one right here. Let's see here. We got Thomas. Thomas asks, should I trade A.J. Brown for Terry McLaurin? This is a great question here because both these players have been struggling up to this point. I'm going to be using the Walter Picks app to look at some stats here. You can see a pretty good target share for A.J. Brown. The fantasy points have not been there, but the thing I'm most concerned about for this team is the passing volume. While his target share is fine, the volume for the team is just not there. And we go to his game log and we see week 1, 1.8 points. We remember he had that one target at the very end of the game. Week 2 was a little bit better. He had 8 targets. That's definitely going to be plenty for him to be a fine starter, but we still only saw 5 receptions and, more importantly, 27 yards. If we look at their schedule, they face the Giants twice coming up here soon. Heading into the playoffs, they do face the Chargers, good run defense. They face the Raiders, pretty good run defense, also terrible pass defense. Then they face the Commanders and the Bills. Those are some pretty high-scoring games where the Eagles may need to pass. So I actually do like his fantasy football playoff schedule. So now let's go take a look at Terry McLaurin here. His week 2 performance. He had 5 receptions just like A.J. Brown. He had one more target. He had 9 targets. So both these players really showing up in week 2 a lot more than they did in week 1. But the key here, we go to the team tab, and we see passing attempts a lot higher than the Eagles. It goes from dead last to 21st in the league. That's a pretty big and substantial jump. The other thing I like about Terry McLaurin is that he missed a lot of the preseason. Remember, he was holding out, waiting for that deal. He did eventually get it, and that may take some time for him to build back that chemistry with Jane Daniels, where Deebo Samuel was there the entire time. So Deebo Samuel had that great preseason connecting with Jane Daniels, where Terry McLaurin, they've played together. They don't need that much time. But we saw that big jump from week 1 to week 2. And I personally think Terry McLaurin, with the extra pass volume that the Commanders have, is going to bounce back and be at least similar to what he was last year. And I'll go to that 2024 game log, and we'll just review what Terry McLaurin was able to put together. He did have a lot of touchdowns, which was propping up some of his fantasy value. Both these guys were on my do not draft list, but we see the touchdowns, especially at the end of the season, really carrying his production. But still, we have some games without touchdowns where he still put up some good weeks, and he was a lot more consistent. So for me, I would trade A.J. Brown in order to get Terry McLaurin. Thanks, Thomas, for your question. Let's move on to the next one. All right, we got question 2 here. Let's see what we got. We got a question from Son of Liberty, says Terry or Deebo for the rest of the season. So that was unplanned. That was the next question, but let's check that one out. We did just look at Terry McLaurin. Let's go look at Deebo Samuel here. You can see he's wide receiver 8 in fantasy football right now. Absolutely crushing it. Love the target share. Receiving air yards, not that great, but he's being effective in the screen game and in the short yardage. So we look at his receptions, 7 week 1, 7 week 2. Love that consistency. He had a rushing touchdown week 1, had that receiving touchdown week 2, and then the snaps looking awesome. The routes, not as good. 90% is really what we're looking for an elite level. Go find receivers with a 90% route rate. Those are guys you want to trade for if they haven't been performing well, because those fantasy points will be there. 90% is a great threshold. 9 targets on average, 10 week 1, 8 week 2. I personally think that Deebo's been great, but I'm going to stand by what I've been talking about with Terry McLaurin there, that he's going to start to improve over the course of the season, and Deebo will decline a little bit, especially from where he's been scoring the 2 touchdowns. So for me, I think I would rather have Terry McLaurin for the rest of the season. While Deebo may be better in the short term, I think Terry McLaurin will be better, especially later in the season when we get to the fantasy football playoffs. But that's not to say I don't like both these guys. These are both guys I like for fantasy football. So which one would I rather have rest of season? I think they're both going to be good. So it's just a very small difference of why I would prefer Terry McLaurin over Deebo Samuel. On to question number 3. Let's see what we get here. Let's do this top one, and let's see what we got next here. We got Go Kula says, should I start Kyren, Cup, or Pickens? And then they have a bonus question. Should I trade Kyren and Egbuka for Higgins and Ken Walker? So they double dipped here, but we don't have that many subscribers yet. We didn't have that many questions. So we'll do both of those for you. And we're going to look here at first at the start. and sit. So we're going to start with Kyren because he was a topic of both those questions, and he's been doing okay so far. Running back 21. We go to the game log and we see not too great in either week. He did have, I would say, some tougher matchups, even though they are looking good. Houston has a pretty good run defense. Tennessee has a pretty good run defense as well. He did have a touchdown week 1, both weeks 66 yards. We look at the snap percentage, not bad, pretty good on the snap percentage. We look at the route rate, not involved in the receiving game, so that's something to keep in mind. The rushing attempts, really solid. Rush share, amazing as well. So overall, I think Kyren's a great player to have. He's facing the Eagles this week. I personally would play him. I think he's got that great touchdown upside. He wants to compare him to Kupp and Pickens, though. I think Cooper Kupp is a great buy low target this week. I'm glad you have Kupp. He was someone I was targeting in drafts as well. In week 1, it was scary, but week 2, he showed up. Remember, week 1, his first game with the team and also his first game with Sam Darnold and Sam Darnold's first game. And I think that with JSN running all these routes and defenses needing to stop JSN, which has been impossible to do so far, Cooper Kupp's going to have a great season. Week 2, he faced Pittsburgh. They've been pretty weak on defense so far, unfortunately for me as a Steelers fan. But we look here, he had 9 targets, 7 receptions, 90 yards. He looked great. I think Cooper Kupp's going to be very startable for us this season. So against Kyren, though, I'm not sure who I'd want to go with. If it's PPR, though, I do think I might go Cooper Kupp just because Kyren does have a little bit of that tougher matchup against the Eagles where he does have good touchdown upside, but Cooper Kupp, I do think will have a good PPR floor, and he could also score a touchdown as well. And then there's George Pickens, another player that I was high on during drafts. I'm glad he was good week 2, but I'm a little bit scared about his involvement because in this game, he was really strong at the very, very end. Like if the Cowboys were up 2 touchdowns, he would have had a terrible fantasy week. If the Cowboys were down 2 touchdowns, he would have had a terrible fantasy week just because there wouldn't have been that amazing back and forth where each person's taking the lead, tying the game at the very end. So I am nervous for George Pickens. So this week, I personally think I would go with Cooper Kupp. But if you do want to go Kyren Williams for safer points, I would go Kyren Williams. But now let's talk your trade. You want to trade Kyren Williams and Igbuka for Higgins and Ken Walker. So we already look at Kyren Williams. He's been okay. It looks like he's going to be sharing with Blake Corum a little bit this year as well. Let's look at Igbuka. And if you guys have been following me on TikTok or watching my YouTube shorts, you'll see that Igbuka for me is one of the biggest sell highs of the entire league right now. Week 1, 2 touchdowns. Week 2, 1 touchdown on 4 catches each week. So out of 8 catches he has as an NFL player, 3 of those are touchdowns. His points are way overinflated. You also have to remember Chris Godwin will be back at some point. So he wants to trade for T. Higgins and Ken Walker. So we'll start with Ken Walker. I love Ken Walker, guys. He was someone that after week 1, I said buy low. He really proved me right in week 2 against the Steelers with 18, almost 19 fantasy points. We look at his rush share. It's not the strongest. We'd like to see better rush share. That is a little bit scary, but let's go to his yards per attempt were amazing. His rush attempts in the red zone, 3 rush attempts in the red zone. Love that as well. Let's grab his rush attempts, only 13. So that is a little bit disappointing for Ken Walker. He had great fantasy production on low carries, but I still do like him. He was dealing with an injury week 1, but the thing that I love about him, if you watch a Joel Smith video, he talked about it. Ken Walker ran the ball in the 4th quarter week 1, while Charbonnet ran the ball early on. And when you're running the ball in the 4th quarter, that is game time. That's where it really matters. So I think Ken Walker will continue to grow throughout the season. And then let's look at T. Higgins as well. Now, T. Higgins obviously is an amazing player. Last year, he was wide receiver 3 in terms of points per game. He did have a 45-point game, boosting his averages. But we'll look at this so far. But now he's got Jake Browning at quarterback. Jake Browning did throw him a touchdown in week 2. But overall, right now, he had 8 targets. 8 targets is something I really like to see. And I do think he's going to continue to excel in this Bengals offense. Now, the 3 receptions each, that's not so good, but I do think this team will step it up. He may be a good player to buy now because next week, or week 3, he's facing Minnesota. That's a pretty tough game. Facing Denver, that's a tough matchup as well. But then things get a lot easier. And then the fantasy football playoffs, they've got Baltimore. Love that for a passing offense. Joe Burrow could potentially be back as well if they're somehow still in contention. Week 16, they face Miami. Amazing matchup. In week 17, they face the Cardinals. So love that matchup as well. For me personally, I would do the trade. I would trade Kyren and Igbuka to get Higgins. I think Higgins is an upgrade over Igbuka. I think that over the course of the season, especially when Godwin is back, Higgins will start to stand out. And then I would also go for Ken Walker over Kyren. Maybe Kyren's slightly better head-to-head, but I would try to get those 2 players compared to Igbuka and Kyren Williams. All right, we got 2 more questions here. Let's see where we're going next. Would you rather have T. Higgins or Travis Hunter rest of season? Again, we did have some related questions, but not planning them to go back to back like this. So let's check out Travis Hunter. We just did look at T. Higgins there. Let's look at Travis Hunter, because that's a good question, because Travis Hunter, he hasn't been the best so far, but he could definitely grow. His team's got Trevor Lawrence. They are passing the ball like crazy. I guess not that much more than the Bengals, honestly. But it feels like they are with Parker Washington, De'Ami Brown, Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, so many wide receivers on this team. So let's go to his game log so far. 9.3 points, 5.2. He had 6 receptions week 1. Love to see that. Week 2, he had only 6 targets. But this is going to be the up and down of the game, because one of the things you want to look for, his route rate. We talked earlier in the video, you want to look for 90% for an elite player. He's at 64%. And that may get better. He's just a rookie, so he does have room to grow over the season, but this is not off to a great start. His snap percentage is not great either. He's just not on the field for 40% of the offensive snaps, and some of that may have to do with him playing some defense as well. So that's what I'm worried about with Travis Hunter, is there will be games just like there was against the Bengals where he's lining up at corner. And when you line up at corner in the NFL, it's just not the same. They're going to wear him out a little bit more. He's going to be more tired. He's not going to be able to play as many offensive snaps, especially with the depth the Jaguars have. They have Parker Washington, who had a great game last week. They have De'Ami Brown, who's been scoring some touchdowns. He's on a $10 million deal. They have decent wide receivers. They got Brenton Strange. They got Bashul Tutin. They've got Travis Etienne. They have other options. They don't need him on the field every play. That's my worry with Travis Hunter. So I do think Travis Hunter has some major potential, but personally for me, I like T. Higgins a little bit more. I like the fact that Jake Browning threw him a touchdown last week. T. Higgins is a big, strong wide receiver. And when you're a young quarterback or a backup quarterback, targeting those guys that can just go up and get it, even if it's not the most perfect ball, is a great strategy. So for rest of season, I would go with T. Higgins, but I definitely understand where you're coming from with this question. We got one more question. By the way, guys, make sure you hit that subscribe and the like so you can be featured next week in our Friday mailbag. And our last question is from Logan. And Logan says, should I be worried about Nico Collins? Great question, Logan. Let's check him out here. Thankfully, he did have a better week 2 than week 1, but I totally get where this question is coming for as well, because it wasn't a classic Nico Collins game. We see week 1, he had 5.5 points. Week 2, 14.2 points, thanks to that touchdown. But just like T. Higgins, very similar line here, only 3 receptions. We scroll over to the targets as well, but 9 targets, guys. The targets is what I love to see. And let's look at that route rate. It's getting closer to that 90%. At the end of the game, they were running a little bit. I was following it on ESPN, but I know Nick Chubb had that touchdown at the end of the game. But 90% almost route rate, that's amazing. He's the top target for this team, 9 targets in week 2. So right now, I'm not super worried. The thing I love to see, almost 40% target share. And this Texans offensive line is not good. They're going to be struggling this entire season, but they did face 2 pretty insane defenses week 1. The Rams, amazing defense, amazing pass rush. Houston has a great defense and pass rush as well. You can see they're ranked 8th and 5th after week 1 and 2. This week, they get to face Jacksonville, then Tennessee, who's been struggling. And we go to the fantasy football playoffs. They face the Chiefs, who have an amazing run defense. That's week 14. Then in the playoffs, they face Arizona. Great opportunity. They face Las Vegas. Great opportunity. In week 17, they face the Chargers, who, yes, they're 11th for the pass defense, but their rush defense is dominant. So this fantasy football playoff schedule is amazing as well. So I actually think Nico Collins could be a good trade for target. He got 9 targets in week 2. He has a really great schedule. So right now, I would not be worried about Nico Collins. That's going to do it for today. Drop any of your last-minute start-sit questions for week 3 in the comments and hit that subscribe so you can come back next week and be part of the mailbag.